Monday night, it's week 7 of the Coach's Corner here on Leominster TV, alongside Leominster High School head coach Devon Gates. I am Todd Robbins. Happy to have you along with us as we enter week 7, where Leominster will play host to St. John's on Friday night at 7 o'clock. Countdown to kickoff 6:30. We'll have more on that as we continue throughout our broadcast. But, Coach, as we always do, we're going to look back over the last couple of weeks here and talk about 2 very difficult losses. One, first, a 35-6 loss to Shepherd Hill, and then an 8-6 loss to Shrewsbury this very past week. And, you know, beyond the X's and O's, I think it has to be very difficult that as you look at those 2 weeks, a combination of officials' decisions, rulings, and judgment seemingly adversely affected football games. In the case of the Shepherd Hill game, it shortened the game and created a situation where it was impossible for you to mount a comeback. Yep. And then this past week, 2 to maybe 3 scores came down off the board. It's got to be very difficult to look at your team and go, you guys are doing everything you can, and you're dealing with this.
It is difficult, and I don't even really like to talk about the officials. I mean, I don't want to have that be part of the conversation. Right. You know, I'd really, rather have our team, especially in the Shrewsbury game. There's other ways, other opportunities that we had to win the football game. We could have done, a lot of things better. We don't want to leave it up, of a 2-point game and leave it up to the officials. That's not what we're about. It is frustrating when it does play a factor into it. In the Shepherd Hill game, Shepherd Hill did a great job against us in the first half, and we didn't put ourselves in a position to win the game at the end. Did the officials kind of push the game a little faster than what the rules I thought were? I think that's a possibility there. But when it comes down to it, if you're down by 24 points in the fourth quarter, it's running time, and we put ourselves in that position, and we just can't do that.
Once that fourth quarter transpired, obviously you've had experiences as a player, you've had experiences as a coach. When that fourth quarter transpired the way it did, you score a touchdown, seemingly you're about to get the momentum. History has shown Leominster has the ability to do that and make these large fourth quarter comebacks. So seemingly it's a spark. And then all of a sudden, you're not allowed to kick the ball off. So that immediately eliminates the idea of an onside kick. They're going to place the ball down. So there's no way to mount a comeback there. Now you have to try to generate some kind of a turnover. It follows up with 2 timeouts that are taken while the clock is continuing to run. Saw you on the sidelines. You and I have had a chance to talk about it since, but to catch kind of the TV viewers up on this, your kind of position, as either a player or a coach, would you say it's the most powerless you've ever felt on a football field?
I think that's safe to say. It just felt like it kind of took the game out of the coach's hands a little bit, and you never want to be in that position because if it's out of our hands, it's certainly out of the kids' hands. The last couple of weeks, I just feel like there's been some instances where. Some factors, beyond our control have taken the game out of the kids' hands, and that's what I hate to see. Our kids work really, really hard. Despite the record right now, I mean, they're coming to work every day. Their attitude is fantastic. So to see the game get taken out of their hands a little bit, it's unfortunate. It's still on us as coaches and as players to put ourselves in a better position. So it can't be a factor. But when it does kind of transpire that way, you certainly hate to see it with the kids who are working so hard.
The message that I think you can take away from these couple of weeks and what's come out of it, without digging specifically into the numbers, is how much of a counter-punching team your team has developed into. It's seemingly like when they either get popped or backed into a corner, that's when they're at their most dangerous, and they'll come out and respond. So you look at, they're coming off of the Shepherd Hill game, they come into the Shrewsbury game, and they come out charged up. Things transpire, then they immediately get knocked again with one touch, and they run the ball into the end zone, and now all of a sudden you're down, and there's a 2-point conversion, and you're down 8-0, and then seemingly they respond again, and here comes your defense, and now you pitch a shutout the rest of the way. Yeah. You've learned a lot about being a counter-punching team. I don't know that it's where you ever want to be, but your team will respond when they are pushed.
Yeah, eventually we want to get to the point where we're the ones doing the initial punching instead of having to respond. And I think our guys are getting there. We're really paying attention to details, and we go back and we watch film, and there's something little that just a little detail that kids could have done that better, or we could coach better. That'll put us in a better position to be successful, and I think we're getting better at that each week. And I think a lot of that is just kind of the newness of some of the stuff that we're doing, but also just the more time we get to spend each other to kind of really get to know some of the nuances of the plays and what we're doing. So the more that they're getting the more that they're getting exposed to that, I think that the more confident we are, the lower we're executing. So hopefully, we can not have to worry about going down, 8-0, with one play into the game on defense, but it was nice to see the adjustments that we made, and the kids came out and they played. They didn't take that and hang their head. They came back and used it as motivation to fight harder. After
surrendering 35. And then obviously giving up that initial touchdown in that football game, to me, a standout point is the fact that if you go back then and remove that play, your defense pitched a shutout the rest of the night against Shrewsbury. That's an interesting place to be, given that you'd gotten pushed so hard against Shepherd Hill and obviously, looked overmatched. You go back even 2 weeks before that, you get Wachusett. That didn't go very well defensively. Yep. Now you come in, and that very first play from Shrewsbury happens. It's a chance where they could have folded on themselves, and not only did they not, they stood up and said, we're not going to allow you to score ever again.
Yeah, I think they were done with that kind of mindset and dealing with that kind of adversity, and they picked themselves up. And it wasn't the way we had a miracle answer for it. It was just they played tougher. They refused to let them push them around. Our safeties were up. They played harder in the second half. It filled better, and we hustled more. We hustled to the ball, brought guys to the ball, got penetration, and they just didn't. They weren't going to take it lying down. They went and they fought hard, and I was really proud of the effort that they gave defensively, because that's a really good team in Shrewsbury with some really dangerous weapons that they were able to hold, after that initial play.
Coupling the defensive performance to your offensive performance, obviously if you put the two of them together and you sit back and you look and you remove some of the other factors, your team not only played well enough to win, arguably they did win. A couple of apparent scores went by the wayside. How difficult is that from a both former player to player, now as coach, speak and say, look, we did everything we could, and sometimes it's still not going to be good enough?
Yeah, it's tough. It certainly feels like we've gotten the short end of the stick a little bit. But I told our guys, we control our own destiny. If we put ourselves in a better spot, then we're not making ourselves susceptible to some of those calls and some of those things that may not go against us. We got to be able to put more points on the board. We got to be able to play more sound and not leave anything open to interpretation with officiating. And I know it's tough for the officials too. They have the federation rules that they're trying to adjust to, and they've caught a lot of slack too. But it's tough. It's really tough to comment on too. We just got to keep our kids focused on what they can control, and that's what we're going to do. And I thought they responded really well last week. They had a great week of practice. Started off this week really well too. So we're not going to harp on it. We're not going to use it as an excuse. We're just going to rally around each other and get better.
Initial results, one of the things I kind of wanted to delve into was kind of where your team is psychologically within themselves. And I know without the specifics, you've had players step up and take the lead in having to be there. It's not just coach directed, we need to pick ourselves up. It's not just coach directed, or as we would say in teacher speak, teacher centered. Students are picking themselves up. The student athletes are picking themselves up and saying to one another, we can't just use the officials or any of these other things as excuses. We just have to plain do better. And we're going to do better. They're rallying together on their own, and you guys aren't having to do much.
I think the shared adversity that we've had to deal with, I think the kids are sick of it. They don't want to deal with it. They have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, and they're really responding and kind of policing themselves now. They're taking it upon themselves to rally themselves and get together and work together to do it. Because if it's coming from the coach all the time, you're going to be in a bad spot. The kids got to believe, and they have to have ownership over it. And I think we're getting to that spot. Albeit a little bit later than I was hoping for, but I still think we're on a good track right here, where kids are really buying into what we're doing, and I think they're sick of kind of getting pushed around a little bit, and so we have some leaders on the team that are doing a good job at rallying everybody and keeping everybody focused, and just feel really, really proud to have that. It's a nice thing to see.
Absolutely, and it's great when it develops all by itself.
Yes.
Not something you have to
it's
create.
Very organic at the moment, so
that's a good thing. 1 and 5 through 6 weeks. When we sat here in August, Not where anybody wanted to be.
No.
But this is the reality of where you are with Team 125. You're at 1-5. So knowing that your fate's changed, we know kind of how stringent the playoff qualifications are. We know how difficult Division III is. We know kind of where you fall in that, and we'll see it obviously in the power rankings in a minute. Does the mission change? Does the mission become a season about playing spoiler? Is the season now a series of one-week championships that you're trying to string together? Is it about building skills and focusing a team toward that Thanksgiving matchup? Is it a combination of all of those things? What does the mission become when you get to this stage of the game?
Well, our mission from day one has always been go 1-0 each week. So we're not looking past St. John's right now. We're not looking down the schedule. It's not something that we're going to do. We're going to teach the skills to the kids along with the scheme that we feel is going to fit best to give us the best chance for success, and that's how we're going to approach each week. It's not looking ahead. It's not talking about where we're at. It's just focusing on the next team ahead of us, and that's really what we do. We kind of have tunnel vision in that matter, and the kids know, and we're just completely focused on trying to beat St. John's right now.
2 tough losses for Leominster over the last couple of weeks, 35-6 to Shepherd Hill, and then 8-6 to Shrewsbury to follow up in week 6 of action. St. John's the opponent on tap. We'll have more on them in a moment. Let's look at other scores from around the region, kind of set the table on what happened at the end of week 6. You can see Algonquin, who has certainly turned out to be a team that looked way better in reality than maybe they looked prior to the season actually kicking off. A 43-19 victory over Marlborough in a battle of the top 2 teams in Division 3 Central Mass, or at least a couple of those top 2 teams. Wachusett tops Shepherd Hill by a 35-14 count. Doherty continues its perfect run at a 40-21 victory over Tantascwa, probably one of Doherty's toughest challenges since playing Leominster just a couple of weeks ago. Fitchburg tops North Middlesex 35-16, and St. John's with a huge runaway victory over an Eastern Mass power in Zavarian. Speaks to the difficulty, certainly, of this league. We'll flash right into the power ratings through week 6. First chance we get to take a look at. Folks over at the Telegram and Gazette's home team's sports section do a great job of keeping this up to date. So here's where we stand through 6 weeks. Bottom 3 teams, obviously in the red, would not qualify if the playoffs began today. Doherty, Wachusett, St. John's, and Shepherd Hill would be your 1 through 4. They'd match up 1 to 4, 2 to 3 in week 9 action should things transpire. And obviously, Coach, when you look at the league and you know where you're at, the one thing that obviously only having that 1 win and a 1-5 record, and although you find yourself at the bottom at this moment in time, you've managed to accrue almost 9 points with just 1 victory. It speaks to the difficulty of the schedule you all have faced and the types of opponents you've faced down through the 6 weeks of the season. Yeah,
I mean, our schedule is tough, but that's how we want it, though. I mean, in order for us to get better, it doesn't help to play, teams that may not be up to par where we want to be. So playing a tough schedule, it's got its benefits and it's got its pros and its cons. I think we're a stronger team for facing the teams that we had, but you like to see the fruits of the kids' labor be able to show in the win category a little bit more. Our conference it's a grind, and it's not going to change this week with St. John's and a tough Algonquin team after that. But there's nothing that we can really do about it at this point. We're going to plug along and do the best that we can, and prepare the best that we can.
Your answer, I think, begs the next question, but yet I know where the answer is going to go as well, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So that would be, given obviously where you are, where the fate is, how you know the playoffs are, there's been 2 philosophies on scheduling that you've seen teams kind of try to take in order to get to that top 4 in Division 3. And that's either have a schedule that is lower in standard so that you can rack up the wins in order to put yourself in the top 4, or increase the difficulty like St. John's did, and then go 0-2 and take the chance that you'll get to a point in your schedule where you get some traction because you get better and you build your wins, and all of a sudden you're like St. John's and you're 4-2 and you're in the mix. Maybe you're lower, but I think that makes you more dangerous, not less dangerous in the grand scheme of things to those top 2 teams. If you got to dump your whole schedule and write it all over again to what you want, which schedule do you want? You want the one that's easier but accrues the wins, or do you want the one that's harder and builds a tougher team?
I always want to play the best. I always want to play the best, and I think that's what Leominster has done in the past. We've always never shied away from playing the top teams in the state, and it's really where we want to be too. So certainly I don't think. I think the games mean more when you play the toughest competition. I think guys rise to the occasion a lot more. And again, it makes you a better football team in the end. We want to get to a point where we're where we're able to look at some of those best teams in the state and be able to get them on the schedule and be competitive in those games.
Right on the money. Exactly where I thought the answer was going to go. Let's take a look at the Week 7 schedule before we get into Leominster and St. John's. Here's Leominster's upcoming schedule, and as we mentioned, of course, St. John's and Algonquin, those are Leominster's last 2 games, Week 7 and 8. Both games will be at Doyle Field. Both of them will be traditional Friday night, 7 o'clock kickoffs over the next 2 Fridays so that you can plan your schedule accordingly and come on out to Doyle Field. There's a great homecoming crowd there last Saturday night for that Shrewsbury game, and I know the team and the program and the school at large would appreciate the community support, so come on out for that. Then weeks 9 and 10, we know they will be crossover matchup games. Those games will likely be split, 1 home game, 1 road game. We'll know more on that once the dust settles after the 8th week of the season, but all those details will fall into place very, very quickly on the Sunday following that November 1st game in Week 8. So we'll have more on that as we continue. And now the upcoming games in Week 7 we'll be keeping an eye on. You have Shepherd Hill at Shrewsbury, followed up by Worcester North at Doherty. Game will be played at Commerce Bank Field at Foley Stadium, where Doherty's home and away games are traditionally played. Algonquin is at Wachusett. Fitchburg's at Neshoba, and Hudson's at North Middlesex. See those 2 6-0 teams still hanging out there through this many weeks of the season. It certainly speaks to the difficulty of some schedules out there and how difficult it is to get wins. The types of opponents that are out there in the league, Coach, and obviously Wachusett has put themselves in the driver's seat. They'll have control of their own destiny, and they have got some difficult teams that are going to be nipping at their heels as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Wachusett's defense right now, I feel it's been the best defense that we've faced so far this year, and they have it rolling right now. They have the offense is really really in tune with the defenses that they're going against, and being able to run their system, and like I said, defense is just playing great football right now.
Brings us to Week 7 action. Leominster and St. John's, as we mentioned, coming up this Friday night, 7 o'clock at Doyle Field. It will be our Coaches versus Cancer or Breast Cancer Awareness game we do once a year on the broadcast, both on the K-Zone and Leominster TV. So we encourage you to splash a little pink in with your royal blue as well. As we kind of turn our attention, Coach, to that, St. John's shows up on the schedule, as I just mentioned, a team that started 0-2. They've now won 4 straight, scoring 49, 63, 31, and 58, respectively, in their wins over Marlborough, Shepherd Hill, Shrewsbury, and Xaverian. This, we know, every year, this was a team that went 0-2 and was still number 1 in the media poll. Yeah. Say what you will about media polls, but they were number 1 still in the media poll with an 0-2 record. Yeah. Everybody knew what they had because every year, Coach John Andreoli and Bunch find a way to get the gears moving, and they start to score, and they are scoring at an amazing clip. Yeah,
I mean, when you build the system that they have, and kids want to gravitate there and play there, it certainly helps them. They have the up-tempo offense, and there's some guys to go make the plays. I mean, Iman Dennis is a great player, heading to Michigan, and Jay Brunel headed to Notre Dame. It's gonna be a real tough task, but I think our guys are really up to it, and they really they're up for the challenge, and they want to show that they're some top athletes in Central Mass as well. So we're ready for the challenge, and it's going to be a big one. So it's we're just waiting to get to Friday.
That combination of timing, when you look at, obviously, the fact that you just played Shrewsbury, the week before that, they had played St. John's, and when you see kind of where that game is, in St. John's 4 wins, they limited St. John's to just 31 points compared to what other teams have allowed to this point in time. Having now played Shrewsbury with St. John's on deck, getting a chance to kind of see where you're at with both teams, are there things that you can point to and recognize and know, having now matched up against Shrewsbury, where you may be able to take some of that and tactically apply it to the St. John's game?
Sure. I mean, you take something away from every game you take a look at, and every team's trying to expose some of the weaknesses of the other team. So, in watching film, there's some certain things we want to attack and certain ways we want to play it to try to limit some of the explosive plays, and we'll just have to see how well and how disciplined we can play it, and give ourselves a fighting chance on Friday night.
The last decade of matchups between Leominster and St. John's is another one of these growing and continuing to grow rivalries, and it has been for years and years and years. And I think for every public school, every time they match up against St. John's, it's the biggest game of the year to that moment in time.
Yeah.
But I think what really stands out about this last decade of Leominster and St. John's has been the tactical battle, the kind of chess match that has developed almost on the sidelines and then has transferred into the players. As a coach, first time going through the schedule in this league, how excited or interested are you in getting to match wits with Coach John Andrioli?
I'm excited. They do a great job there. So I know that myself and our staff are going to have to be, on point and really making sure that we're in tune with the game and how it develops and how to adjust. But really, I'm just focusing on our scheme right now and what we want to do and making sure that the kids can understand it. If we go out there and change things up and we haven't gone over it with the kids or haven't practiced it, then our chances for great execution are going to be diminished greatly. So we want to make sure that we have a good plan. Our kids are practicing it all week long so they can go out and execute with some confidence.
You don't have to tell us what it is, but is it fair to say there might be something they get to see that they have yet to see when they go back and review your tape?
I think every week we try to throw in a wrinkle that the teams haven't seen yet. Yep. So we try to make sure it's not that's going to overload our kids. We still want them, like I said, to play with confidence. So we're always going to look for that tactical advantage with certain formation or something like that. So you may see some different looks on Friday night.
As you get through 6 weeks and the season goes on and on, you're now aware of the parts that you have. You know how you can move them around in places. You find new and creative ways to do it. How much more difficult, though, as the weeks go by for every team, does it become to continue to be creative and find new wrinkles? I mean, seemingly football has so many plays. I mean, I saw it in the Fitchburg North Middlesex game. I saw a traditional 3-back I or T formation or whatever you want to call it, which I hadn't seen in a number of years in the area. So it's just how much more difficult, or is there always enough football historically you can go back and find something new to bring forward?
Sure. I think with the way that our season has unfolded and some of the guys who have been injured and not available to us on any given week, we've had to get a lot more creative a lot earlier than we normally would. And I think right now it's probably more beneficial for our team to go back to some of the basics and the stuff that we've learned, something that they've done since camp. I think you get to a point as a coach where you kind of have to reinvent yourself too many times, and now the kids' heads are spinning a little bit. And I think that's what we did last week. We kind of went back to basics, and let them just go out and execute. And we saw, we'd like to have obviously more than 6 points on the board, but it felt like we turned a corner a little bit in kind of the way that we were executing. So it did feel a little bit better. I felt like the guys were playing with an offense with a little bit more confidence. So that's kind of the path we want to take. You certainly look for some creative advantages with some stuff, but right now we just really need to put points on the board and try to get a win, and we're going to do that the best way we think.
Couple of things about St. John's I think that stand out, that differentiate perhaps from the opponents you've played thus far. This will be the first time in a number of weeks that your defense is going to be asked to defend more vertically, in addition to on the ground. Yep. Especially with two weapons, Jay Brunell and Eamon Dennis. Those will be the two names we'll be talking about. One's bound for Notre Dame, the other one's bound for Michigan. It's tough not to know who they are and obviously know their talent, but it's going to be a change. There's not going to be this hide and seek shell game. They're going to tell you, I'll tell you now, they're going to give it to those guys. Yeah. You know it going into the week. It's a big difference.
Yeah, I think it's athlete versus athlete, and to me, at least, our defense looking at their offense, it's a lot less of a tactical advantage. I think it's about getting the blocks and letting your athletes do work in space, and I think that's what they're going to try to do to us. So we got to be up for the challenge and make sure that we're limiting explosive plays. I don't think we're going to be able to stop them. We got to slow them down enough where we can keep pace and be able to put points on the board ourselves, limit their offensive possessions, limit their time with the football, and I think it starts with Schofield, with the quarterback, and trying to make him uncomfortable a little bit too. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Do you bring pressure and play man and get those guys in single coverage, or do you mix it up a little bit? So we're seeing what works best for us and the advantage that we want and how we want to proceed with it. But yeah, it certainly presents quite the challenge.
in recent history, Leominster found this out as recently as last year with Eamon Dennis. But certainly, in addition to how he can take the ball offensively and hurt you, he can take the ball on special teams and hurt you as well, having torched Leominster last year for an opening kickoff run back for a touchdown. Certainly not the way anybody wants to begin a football game, regardless of what team you are. And he's done it a number of times since, and will likely do it a number of times after this week as well. What is it about that now from a special team standpoint, which is never the thing you have enough time for in practice? It's never the thing you have enough specialists for on your bench. So you try to put together the best combination of special teams you have. I know special teams coordinator Brad Bentz puts out a very detailed plan. Clearly, limiting his effectiveness on special teams is really important.
Absolutely. I mean, we can't give him any extra touches of the ball. So we're going to limit how many times. We're going to try to limit how many times he can touch the ball. And that starts with special teams and being able to have a plan, kicking the football, and making sure that he's not getting an open getting the ball and then getting the ball in open space. So it's certainly something that we got to pay attention to and account for. And like I said, we want to limit the amount that number 5 touches the ball.
And we will see that coming up on Friday night. It's Leominster and St. John's Friday night, October the 25th at Doyle Field. Again, a 7 o'clock kickoff. 6:30 will be our countdown to kickoff. Lots of ways to participate. AM 1280, 105.3 FM, live stream at WPKZstream.com. Countdown to kickoff again begins at 6:30. Then our partners at Leominster TV will be joining us as well. Comcast, Verizon, YouTube for the replays, where you can get all of our game replays as well, in addition to on the linear channels as well. And they'll join us for their Facebook Live coverage, which we saw a phenomenal response to. Close to 4,000 of you join us through Facebook Live as well, and got to hear from some alumni as far north as Vermont and off to the west in the United States as well. Play-by-play coverage on Facebook Live will begin at 7 o'clock. Again, splash a little bit of pink in as we ask you, obviously, for October being Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and to make that crucial catch along with us, splash a little pink in with your royal blue as well to support that cause as we go through this week as well. So it's Leominster and St. John's on Friday night, and then we're right back here next Monday for our weekly edition of the Coach's Corner here on Leominster TV. For Kate Robbins back in the studio, Carl Pimarini, Executive Director of Leominster TV, and Leominster Head Coach Devon Gates, I am Todd Robbins, and until next Monday night, we say so long from the Coach's Corner.